All right, hello there, thrill seekers. That, of course, was the thrilling sound of the song Love Buzz, originally by I think they were Dutch band called Shocking Blue, and also famously covered by Nirvana, so some of you probably know the Nirvana version. And that was played on the Rogue electric sitar, put through the Ravish sitar pedal, so it's extra sitar-y, and actually I think that's the best sort of sitar imitation I've ever been able to come up with, is to put the electric sitar through the sitar pedal. It actually it enhances everything. The sitar pedal adds the sympathetic string sound, which, even though that's got sympathetic strings, the sympathetic strings don't vibrate that much, and so you don't get that much sympathetic string sound. Anyway, you're not guitar nerds. Oh, but if you are guitar nerds, and if you're thinking about buying the electric sitar, there's a lot of stuff on the internet about how they're impossible to intonate. Well, I think that's because people aren't even trying, because I just screwed around, actually literally screwed around with a couple of screws on the bridge and played with it for a few minutes, and I got the intonation just fine. So there you go. They're not impossible to intonate. Maybe I should do a guitar video just on that. Anyway, that was... I'm getting all blown around. Anyway, that was the musical portion of today's thing. And I'd like to thank all of you who showed up for my talk at Banyan Books, the online talk that I did last Saturday. And I'm doing another one of those this coming Saturday, June 18th at 11:30 a.m. at East West Books. And I'm putting the URL on the screen below. But if you want to find it, you just go to eastwestbooks.org and look under the events page if you don't want to write down that whole URL. Gosh, this wind is blowing my hair all crazy wampus. All right, so today I want to present to you something from this book, Be As You Are, The Teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi. Now, I should point out, as I usually point out when I talk about this stuff, that Sri Ramana Maharshi, was not a Buddhist. He was a Hindu is probably the accepted term, but Hindu is kind of a catch-all term invented by the British and so on and so forth, if anybody really worries about those things. I don't really like the word Hinduism, but it's the only word we've got. The relationship between Hinduism and Buddhism is interesting to me, and when it was first introduced to me, that when I first started learning about Hinduism and Buddhism, in earnest, my way of understanding it was that Hinduism is to Buddhism much like Judaism is to Christianity. And I'm surprised people don't use that analogy. I guess they don't use that analogy because it's not a perfect analogy and it falls apart at certain points. But in a lot of ways it's true. So if you understand the relationship between Judaism and Christianity, then you can kind of understand the relationship between Hinduism and Buddhism. Hinduism is the sort of foundational set of beliefs and explanations for how the world works that Buddhism sort of grew out of. Although Buddhism, like Christianity, is very different from Judaism in many important and significant ways. Sorry, tongue-tied. Also, Buddhism is different in many important and significant ways from Hinduism. But they both share the teaching of karma, and that's what this section that I want to read to you is about. Now, what I'm going to read to you is a kind of Hindu formulation of karma that I haven't encountered in Buddhism, although it might be there if you dig into the sort of ancient strata of Indian Buddhism, which I have to admit I am not as well versed on Indian Buddhism as maybe some people think I should be. Japanese Buddhism, which is what I studied, kind of dropped a lot of the Indian Buddhist stuff long before it even reached Japan. But in this book, they discuss, this is actually edited by David Godman. So this bit I'm going to read first comes from David Godman, and he's explaining the following classification, which is used by Sri Ramana, is common to many Hindu schools of thought. And here they are. This is 3 kinds of karma. 1, sanchita karma, the store of karmic debts accumulated from previous births. 2, prarabdha karma, that part of one's sanchita karma which must be worked out in the present life, because the law of karma implies determinism in human activities. Prarabdha, I think I'm pronouncing that right, is often translated as destiny. And 3, agami karma, new karma accumulated in the present lifetime which is carried forward into future lives. So in this chapter, which is called Karma, Destiny, and Free Will, Ramana Maharshi discusses these types of karma, and I find that really interesting that it's divided into 3 types in their system. My training, such as it was in Japanese Zen Buddhism, is that karma just means action, and action always implies a kind of reaction to it, and karma is just what you do, and Nishijima Roshi was fond of calling Buddhism a philosophy of action. So it's a philosophy of karma, I guess, if you will. Ugh. Can't keep this from happening, but we'll just deal with it, right? You'll deal with my crazy hair. So that's my karma, my hair karma. So we never get into karma in this kind of detail, but I do feel that kind of learning all of this stuff from the ancient Hindu or Advaita Vedanta tradition, I kind of feel that when I read Buddhism, yeah, that's all kind of in the background of it. So there you go. That's how I present it for you now. And some people in the comments might argue, but that's my feeling about it. So the passage that interests me that I want to talk about today actually came up on Instagram, of all places, and I found it kind of fascinating, this little quote, and they didn't produce the entire quotation, but I managed to find the entire quotation by sort of digging around for the references that they put on below the thingy. You know how on Instagram there's a little thingy? What's that called? Caption. Anyway, in the caption. So here is the quote. This is actually, I'm even cutting it down a little bit, but not as much as they did on Instagram. Here we go. Questioner. Is there such a thing as free will? Question we all kind of want to know. And Ramana Maharshi answers, whose will is it? That's the key question. So long as there is a sense of doership, there is the sense of enjoyment of individual will. But if this sense is lost through the practice of vichara, which is basically kind of the spiritual practice, meditation, contemplation, more or less that. Let me look that up and make sure I'm getting that right. They define vichara as self-inquiry. So, yeah, zazen would probably be among the many practices of vichara, if you want to go into it that way. But if this sense of individual self is lost through the practice of vichara, the divine will act and guide the course of events. Fate is overcome by jnana. Jnana is knowledge. Self-knowledge, which is beyond will and fate. Questioner. I can understand that the outstanding events in a man's life, such as his country, nationality, family, career or profession, marriage, death, etc., are all predestined by his karma. But can it be that all the details of his life, down to the minutest, have already been determined? Now, for instance, I put this fan that is in my hand down on the floor here. Can it be that it was already decided that on such and such a day, at such and such an hour, I should move the fan like this and put it down here? So this gets into that other sort of idea of free will that's okay, when people talk about determinism in Western philosophy, I kind of feel like there's a kind of strong determinism and weak, or not a strong determinism, maybe not weak, but anyway, strong determinism is what he's talking about here, where the fan, everything, like me picking up my cell phone and showing it to you, that was picked up, and the fact that I put the dinosaur sticker on my cell phone, that's all decided, not just my overall life. So, okay. And here's how Ramana Maharshi answers. Certainly. Anyway, whatever this body is to do and whatever experiences it is to pass through was already decided when it came into existence. So that's a pretty strong statement of strong determinism. And the questioner asks, what becomes then of man's freedom and responsibility for his actions? And since I just wrote a book that I've been talking about called The Other Side of Nothing, that is all about ethics, then this idea of responsibility and freedom of action is key, because you got to have some kind of free will, or else ethics just, what's the point? So here's his answer. The only freedom man has is to strive for and acquire the jnana, knowledge, which will enable him not to identify himself with the body. The body will go through the actions rendered inevitable by prarabdha, that's the kind of karma that kind of determines what happens in this life, and a man is free either to identify himself with the body and be attached to the fruits of its actions, or to be detached from it and be a mere witness of its activities. Questioner says, so free will is a myth? Ramana Maharshi answers, free will holds the field in association with individuality. As long as individuality lasts, there is free will. All the scriptures are based on this fact, and they advise directing the free will in the right channel, which means be ethical. Find out to whom free will or destiny matters. Find out where they come from and abide in their source. If you do this, both of them are transcended. That is the only purpose of discussing these questions. To whom do these questions arise? Find out and be at peace. So this is kind of Ramana Maharshi's technique. He has two techniques that he advises. One is to inquire, who am I? Oh, sorry, Ziggy. Ziggy's sniffing me here. Anyway, the question is to question yourself, who am I? And also, every question is answered with who wants to know. This is something that my first teacher, Tim, used to do a lot. He used to do the who wants to know answer for a lot of my questions. The questioner asks, if what is destined to happen will happen, is there any use in prayer or effort, or should we remain idle? And he answers, there are only two ways to conquer destiny or be independent of it. One is to inquire for whom is this destiny and discover that only the ego is bound by destiny and not the self with a big S, and that the ego is non-existent. The other way is to kill the ego by completely surrendering to the Lord, God, by realizing one's helplessness and saying all the time, not I, but thou, O Lord, giving up all sense of I and mine and leaving it to the Lord to do what he likes with you. Surrender can never be regarded as complete so long as the devotee wants this or that from the Lord. True surrender is love of God for the sake of love and nothing else, not even for the sake of liberation. In other words, complete effacement of the ego is necessary to conquer destiny, whether you achieve this effacement through self-inquiry or through bhakti marga. And bhakti marga is devotional practice. And devotional practice is kind of similar to the Christian approach, and it exists in Hinduism, in bhakti kind of Hinduism, and also exists to a certain extent in Buddhism in the form of the Pure Land Buddhist tradition, in which you devote yourself to Amida Buddha and surrender yourself to Amida Buddha in the hopes that you'll get enlightenment in the next life. So there are really interesting similarities in all these approaches. For example, the Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, and Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, are kind of analogous to Zen, would be kind of the Jnana tradition, the tradition of kind of going into deep self-inquiry, and the Bhakti tradition would be kind of similar to Pure Land, which is just giving yourself over to Amida Buddha. The Hindus would probably give themselves over to Krishna, the Christians give themselves over to Christ and let Christ do with you what he will. This, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what you should do, but I find that for me the Zen tradition is the only one that works. But I will say that in Buddhism, the Zen tradition and the Pure Land tradition have always been very friendly with each other. Both of them kind of saying to their adherents, if you're a Zen adherent and things aren't working out for you, the Zen teacher might tell you to try Pure Land Buddhism. This, what's his name, Uchiyama kind of did this. Uchiyama kind of went into Pure Land practice later in life, even though he'd been a Zen practitioner all his life and had been a student of Kodo Sawaki, who was definitely a Zen guy. Buddhists do this this too when I was at the in Chicago. When I was living in Chicago, I used to go to the Chicago Buddhist temple, which was a Pure Land temple, but they all still practice Zazen. So they kind of value Zazen, and they do it often sometimes. I don't know, that's kind of a contradiction. Anyway, I thought that was real interesting, and this book as a whole is real interesting, so it might be something you'd be interested in taking a look at. And there you go. That's the thing for today. I hope you enjoyed the electric sitar. I got some more electric sitar planned for you for the rest of the week, so you'll be seeing that again. Anyway, if you want to contribute to me continuing to buy books by Ramana Maharshi and experiment with the electric sitar and all that, you can contribute, and also buy food and pay rent and things like that. That's the main thing. You can go to my website, or you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are pretty much my only ways of making a living until you make The Other Side of Nothing a million seller. So I'll have to continue asking for money from you folks. But I really appreciate when you can donate. However, you don't have to donate because this is offered for free, so only donate if you want to donate. That's my message. Anyway, you will have a good time. Please have a good time all the time. We will see you later. Bye. Hey Ziggy, what do you think of the electric sitar? Did you like that crazy swirly Indian sound? You like that drony stuff? You were barking at it yesterday, weren't you? Hey Ziggy, say hi to the folks. All right, we'll see you later.